All right, One Piece, chapter 1152, full spoilers have just dropped, and we're here to talk about them. Brother, what a chapter. You know, what a great chapter this is. So, real quick though, if you have not read the spoilers for yourself yet, I will be linking it down in the pinned comment as to where I found them, as well as typing it out piece by piece down below, so feel free to check it out over there. But yes, today we're here to just kind of talk about the brass tacks, talk about the main important topics, and get along with our day. So, first up, we got the Gaban conversation about Conqueror's Haki and how to hurt the Holy Knights. Gaban approaches Luffy, and he says, Luffy, pay attention to how you use your Conqueror's Haki. The enemies that are here are definitely not immortal. And then Gaban looks over at Zoro and Sanji and says, looks like it's not just one person here that has Conqueror's Haki. Sanji jumps up. He says, is it me? I knew it. I will not let Mosshead and Jinbei Stock be the only one rising. Gaban ignores Sanji and goes right over to Zoro and says, swordsman, over there. Looks like your body is already used to it. And Zoro's like, wait, I have the color of conquerors? Luffy says, wait, Zoro, you didn't know? You've been leaking it this entire time, brother. And Gaban says that Zoro is a joke. Haki is only useful if you can recognize it and control it. Is this how you intend to support your captain, who is one of the Yonko? And then Zoro ends up apologizing, and that is when Sanji jumps back into the conversation, and he says, hey, old man, what about me? But that right there is where the conversation ends, because they get interrupted by Loki and Harald. So, going back to the beginning, Conqueror's Haki is the answer to hurting the Holy Knights. That is confirmed this chapter, and I've been pretty mixed about it, but I'm becoming more and more positive about that outcome. And the reason I've been mixed, right, I've explained it a million times, but I kind of want the Straw Hats who don't have Conqueror's Haki to be important in these fights. Of course they can play support roles, but the fact that Conqueror's Haki is the key means that we will not get, a Brook 1v1, a Robin 1v1, a Frankie 1v1, even a Jinbei 1v1, right? I think that's kind of where I was hung up at. But Conqueror's Haki is not a bad solution, not a bad choice, because that will bring back other characters who have Conqueror's Haki into the fray, right? Like your Captain Kids, your Doflamingos, Boa Hancocks, who else has Conqueror's Haki? Don Chinjiao, right? So I don't think it's that bad. I think we will get like an amalgamation of characters fighting the WG by the end of the story anyways. So bringing all the Conquerors together, I like it. I'm coming around towards that idea, and I'm actually kind of positive about it right now. So as far as the Sanji Zoro Conqueror's Haki debate, honestly, as a Sanji fan and Zoro fan, my takeaway is actually quite positive. For Zoro, I'm like, brother, when did Zoro first get Conqueror's Haki? Because apparently, like I said, he's been leaking it for a while now. Did this start back in Wano after his fight against King? Or was Zoro leaking it all the way back at like Fishman Island? Because if you told me that, I'd believe you, right? Zoro does feel like a character that would have Conqueror's Haki post-time skip. So if we do go all the way back to Fishman Island or Punk Hazard where he fought Monet, and you told me that Zoro was leaking Conqueror's Haki this entire time, he just didn't know how to use it, I would believe you. I kind of just would have wished that Zoro, unintentionally made some fodder collapse here and there. I think that would make it even better. But like maybe back in the day, we saw somebody just pass out for no reason, and here we have the explanation. It's because Zoro was just a leaky boy. So as far as Sanji goes, right, I've seen some people saying that this looks bad for Sanji, and I do not agree. Maybe this is cope on my end, but Gaban didn't say that Sanji did not have Conqueror's Haki. He simply ignored Sanji, right? Which, you could look at that two different ways. You could say, oh, like Sanji's not even worth mentioning, or you could say that, oh yeah, Sanji has it, but he's keeping it under wraps. Another thing I thought that was kind of interesting is that since Sanji is very competitive by nature, right? We know this. Since Sanji is competitive and he knows that Zoro now has Conqueror's Haki on top of everything, I wouldn't be shocked if Sanji somehow, some way unlocks it here in Elbaf. And the reason I say that is because of what we learn of next. Apparently, Luffy, Loki, Harden, and Scopper all stay in the underworld for the flashback we get this chapter. Zoro, Sanji, and the rest of Harden's crew actually starts making their way up to the Sun Realm. Brother, the only one amongst that group that has Conqueror's Haki that could possibly hurt the Holy Knights is Zoro. So sending Sanji and the rest of the gang there alongside him, it just feels odd. And I really feel like Oda will not put Sanji in a situation where he cannot fight a Holy Knight. Like I said, maybe I'm coping heavily when I say this, but I really do think Sanji will be able to hurt a Holy Knight this arc, and you will unlock some sort of Conqueror's Haki. So going back to the topic of Conqueror's Haki as a broad spectrum, what does it look like to use your Conqueror's Haki correctly? Apparently, when Luffy fought Kaido, he was using it very sloppily. How do you perfect it? What does perfected Conqueror's Haki look like, right? We don't really know yet, because right now, Luffy is simply just coating his fists in Conqueror's Haki. But when you attack a Holy Knight, do you have to aim for their spirit? Do you have to aim for their persons, like maybe a specific point in their body? Do you have to use it like Ryuo, where you imagine yourself just imbuing your Haki into somebody else? We're not exactly sure yet. But I'm glad we finally got this all clarified, right? We now know how to beat these guys. They are not immortal. You can kill them. And that is worth $1 million right there. So, as far as this next part, we get the Loki and Harden flashback. We get revealed to what actually happened that day. And this is thanks to Harden not wanting to let Loki loose. You know, Harden is telling everybody, no, we're not going to release Loki from his chains. Luffy says, oh, Loki, why don't you join the crew then? And then Harden has to let you on. Loki says no to that. And that is when Gaban doubles down. He joins Luffy's side and he says, Harden, just let him go. You know, release him already. And Gaban says, I was actually there that day. Me and Shanks were on Elbaf the day King Harald died. And that is when we see it. We see a younger Loki and a younger Jarl make their way to the castle. We don't know why they were summoned. Apparently, King Harald was about to join the world government, and Loki had his qualms about that because he doesn't like the WG, because they're the ones who killed Rocksteady Zebek, his idol. So they make their way over there, and right when they open the castle door, they see that King Harald is being stabbed by his own soldiers. According to the leakers, King Harald is silhouetted in that panel. So you can't really tell what King Harald looks like, but take this with a grain of salt. They say that King Harald does look like he had wings and horns in that panel. Yes, King Harald might have been Domi reversing. Maybe he even got contracted by Emu, right? Kind of like the Holy Knights or the Gorosei. He just had his own demonic transformation, possibly, and that could be why his own soldiers killed him. But that right there is still up in the air. We definitely need more details about the situation. We can't just open the door, see King Harald get stabbed with the demonic horns and wings, and just call it a day. No. We need to know how we got to this point. And not just that, but another thing I'm really questioning right now is Jarl. Jarl witnessed the fact that Harald was being stabbed by his own soldiers. So why is Jarl up in the Sun Realm talking about Loki and, you know, putting him in jail? Like, I don't get that yet. It could be because Jarl has the sword through his head, right? I think that's my fallback, right? Jarl, he was there, but maybe he misremembered events because he got stabbed in the head, right? I feel like if I were to get hit in the head with a rock, I think things would get a little bit fuzzy too, right? Not even the great old Derek Shepherd would be able to save my memory. So I think that's what happened to Jarl. I don't think he's malicious by putting Loki down in the underworld and chaining him up for all these years. I think that he just forgot what happened. I think that is the simplest solution, but we will see about that. So we go on and we cut over to Gaban and Shanks. And Gaban looks a lot younger here because it was 14 years ago. And Shanks has his shirt off. Ladies, keep the pants on. But Shanks has a shirt off here. And we see it. Right above his elbow on his left arm, he has the mark of the abyss. And it is not similar to Saint Somers' tattoo. Actually, it's similar to the bandage or cloth around Saint Somer and Killingham's arm. That right there is probably the mark of the abyss. We've been hearing about this entire time. Shanks has that exact same logo on his arm. The arm that the Sea King ate. Brother. I like it. Obviously, when we got chapter 1 of One Piece, Oda did not think about all of this, but I think this is a great thing to add in here, because 1, it explains why Shanks let the arm get eaten, and 2, it's in a spot that we never have seen before, right? Go back to chapter 1 of One Piece. We saw Shanks' forearms, right? We've seen his chest, but we did not see right here his bicep, nor his triceps. So I think that is a great addition. And, Redon, thankfully enough, he drew an image as to what the symbol actually looks like, so we get a closer up image. Of course, he said it is not exactly 1-to-1 because he doesn't know what the symbol is supposed to be. But if you look at it, you can see that it is very much the symbol that Sommers and Killingham have. Which makes me wonder, right? Because Killingham and Sommers have that mark, but it's on cloth. So do they have this mark somewhere else on their body? Because St. Sommers' tattoo, I went back and I looked at it. It does not have that mark exactly. So maybe St. Sommers has that same mark, but it's, on his chest. Maybe it's on his back. We don't really know yet. As far as what the symbol is supposed to be, it does remind me of the world government logo. Because the WG logo is just a cross with dots at each end and in the middle. So it kind of looks like that, but you also add in a circle. It kind of looks like a crosshair, actually. Call of Duty crosshair here. But yeah, I think that will be explained later. That could have been the symbol of the world government like 900 years ago, and Emu just kept that symbol in circulation. And then, of course, the world government adopted a newer logo. I could totally see that. But yeah, Shanks, one way or another, got marked, and kind of feel bad for him, man. Shanks doesn't seem like he exactly wanted this life, because he tells Gaban, he says, man, I really wish I could just live a jolly life with Buggy as a pirate. And what a reality that would have been. And, it's one of those things where it's like Shanks took on this responsibility himself despite his wishes, right? He really just wanted to be with Buggy and to hang out with him. And just imagine, dude, if Shanks and Buggy actually did become pirates together, ooh, they'd be unstoppable, man. But also, would Shanks be a bad guy? Because Buggy, when he was introduced, he was taking over a whole town. He stole the town, he was blowing up buildings, he had hostages. Buggy wasn't exactly a saint. So I wonder how Buggy would have changed if Shanks was there. Would Shanks lean into Buggy's piratehood, or would Buggy lean into Shanks's? Now that I think about it, though, I think the latter is more plausible. Like, Buggy only became bad because Shanks didn't join him. Because Buggy did sail with Roger. So I'm assuming a lot of Roger's tendencies fell onto Buggy. But then Buggy crashed out because, he was left alone. But yeah, a lot of interesting things there. And another line from the spoilers that really just, got the alarms blaring, dude. It is what Gaban says. Gaban says, "It's been such a long time since me and you shared a bathtub, Shanks. It must have been 3 or 4 years." And Shanks, he says, "Of course not. It's been a decade since the captain has passed." All right, party people, I gotta ask, is Gaban really bad with keeping track of time, or is this the Elbaf time dilation theory at hand? I'm gonna be honest, man. Maybe I'm biased, but I do think we are getting hints of how Elbaf changes your perception of time. It just makes so much sense. Louis Arnaud's messaging, Emu showing up at Elbaf and saying, "Hey guys, what's taking you so long?" Right? Despite them being just summoned here like an hour ago. And then here we have it. Gaban saying it must have been 3 to 4 years ago since we last shared a bath, and Shanks says, no, it's been a decade, brother. Yes, that is a rate of about 3 times. So let's say, for example, the Straw Hats have been here in Elbaf for 1 day. On the outside world, that is 3 days possibly. Crazy stuff. A lot can happen in 3 days. People are underselling it, but let me tell you guys, the world of One Piece is moving towards Laugh Tale. Sword is going after the poneglyphs. The Marines are thinking about it. The Holy Land is under attack. Blackbeard's after the ancient weapons. Shanks is after the One Piece. 3 days can change a lot. So I'm excited to see what Oda's going to do with this. Like I said, I might be a little bit biased in believing this theory too early, but I think Oda is dropping those breadcrumbs right here. So now, on to the later portions. Gaban does call Shanks the child of destiny, but he does not want to talk about complicated things today with Shanks. And that is when, at the same time, in the castle at Elbaf 14 years ago, we see a mysterious shadow opening the treasure room and taking the legendary devil fruit. Yes. We kind of speculated yesterday what the legendary devil fruit actually might be, and I think a majority of people are saying that it might just be the Gumu Gumu no Mi, or the Sun God Nika fruit, and that is later what Shanks goes off to obtain from Who's Who, and then Luffy later eats that, like, a year later. I don't think that's bad. Of course, there is, like I said, still a lot of mystery surrounding this flashback, right? I don't want to jump to any assumptions right off rip, but if I had to put my chips down on the table, I think that is the Sun God Nika fruit. As far as who is stealing that fruit, we're not too sure. It could be Loki eating the fruit. It could be Who's Who. It could be a Holy Knight. We're just not super sure yet. And I'm kind of curious, what does the mysterious shadow actually look like? Will we be able to tell who it is based off the silhouette? Or is Oda simply going to draw like a blackened figure with eyes, right? We don't really know. So now, we get another flashback within this flashback, and we go back 109 years ago. Back when the most feared thing on the seas were giant pirates. We see a younger Dory, Brogy, Oibo, and Kashi. They are sailing, and at the same time, we see another giant pirate ship heralded by King Harald, and he is attacking a human kingdom. And it looks like he's after the princess inside the castle? Yeah. Harald says, I heard they have a beautiful princess inside that castle. Let's go take a look. And Harald starts attacking his own people because he wants to get to the princess first. And that is where we end the chapter with the crazy young King Harald. And we even get a narrator box that calls him Harald, the king of Elbaf, who ascended to his throne at the young age of 45, 15, and human age. And this guy was a real jerk. Yeah, it's funny seeing this because, up until this point, we've gotten painted so many different pictures of Harald, right? We have the Harald that loved Loki and Harden. We have the Harald that supposedly worked with the WG and Emu. And then we have the Harald that built schools and supported the library and wanted to open Elbaf up. And now we're having Jerk Harald in his younger years, man. It just shows, In different steps of life, we're all different people. Kind of funny. Great chapter overall, man. There's going to be a lot to speculate in regards to this, especially with the Shanks stuff. Like, I'm so excited to see if Shanks has a demon transformation. Can he regenerate? If so, why didn't he regenerate the arm that the Sea King ate? Can he travel through the abyss? Did he take that symbol willingly? Did Emu force it on him? What does the Child of Destiny even pertain to? Oh, dude, the theory realm of One Piece is going to go absolutely insane with this one. But with that being said, guys, that is just my initial thoughts on this chapter. Like I said, it's an absolute... Would I give it a 10 out of 10? Like, there's no fights in this chapter, and I'm a fight junkie, so, if there's a fight here, too, if we saw somebody brawling, maybe. But lore-wise, it might take that 10. Just giving that reveal to Shanks, having everybody simmer on that for a little bit, that's kind of nuts. But yeah, no break next week. We will be back soon. Make sure to drop your comments and theories down below. We will be coming back, revisiting this video, and reading through the comment section. So if you want your comment read, possibly in the next video, make sure to drop your thoughts down there. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching this video up until this point. Just some shameless plugs for myself. Of course, I do have my main channel, SYV, where I post all my One Piece chapter reviews, my long discussions with Brago and Par. I also have a gaming channel over at Syvduck, and I stream every other night, super late at night on Syvduck as well. So if you want to see me play some horror games, hop over there. And I also have an anime reaction channel where I react to One Piece, Black Butler, Danadana, and Sakamoto Days when that comes back, and all that good stuff. So feel free to check that out over at Somnus Reacts. And now, with all that being said, I bid you guys adieu. Take care.